Lecture 2 of Apologetics. We talked as preparation to an introduction, and so now we are looking at the word itself being used in the Bible. And we read from 1 Peter 3, and we read verse 15. Let me read. But sanctify the Lord God in your hearts, and be ready always to give an answer to every man that asketh you, a reason of the hope that is in you with meekness and fear. The word being used here is apologia. It's of course a Greek word because the New Testament is written in Greek. It's a noun, it's a feminine noun, and it's in the Strong Concordance number, it's related to number 626. In a verb, you have a verbal defense, you have a speech of defense, you have reasoning, a statement, or an argument. You find the word in the King James Bible translated as defense 3 times, answer 3 times, answer to oneself 1 time, and clearing of oneself also 1 time. So you have this specifics. And let's now look at Acts 2. First we go to the next slide. Yeah. In this case we have Acts 2 verse 22. Acts 9 verse 22. But Saul increased the more in strength, and confounded the Jews which dwell at Damascus, proving that this is very Christ. So the proving here is in the Greek word sumbibazo. It's a Greek verb. Remember, we talked about Greek. It's from Strong's Concordance 4862, and bibazo is to force, causative, by reduplication of a base, which is the 939 in the Strong Concordance. To cause, to coalescence, to join together, to put together. That is the word being used here. To unite, to knit, or to knit together, even in affection. To put in one's mind, to compare it, to consider, to conclude, to cause a person to unite with one in a conclusion, or to come to the same opinion, to prove, demonstrate, teach, instruct one. So here we have a whole range of meanings, and this is how you can translate the word, and then you understand what it means. That's what Paul is doing, and that is what we supposed to be doing also. We've seen how Paul uses the word. We've seen how Luke was using the word in the book of Acts and explaining what Paul was doing. And in church history, in the course of the history of the church, we have a whole range of people who were doing or proclaiming or explaining the word apologia. In the 2nd century, Paul and Luke, they lived in the 1st century. So the 2nd century, we already have another one speaking about apologia. We have to understand what is going on, because etymologically spoken, etymologically means that we go back to the original meaning of the word. So we're not really interested in what it means today, but what did it mean at that time? What was the value of the word? What was the meaning of the word at that time? And this is a legal issue that's being used, and you have two different ideas in a legal court. So what is one thing is the categoria, and then you have the answer to the categoria is the apologia. Again, apology or apology in the English word today has nothing to do with this, because in this case it is the word apologia is part of a defense of a person. So the prosecution would use what we call, or what we see here is the categoria. That's how the prosecution will do, and then you are defended, and the defense is called the apologia. So here we have the different words in a context, in classical Greek, in a judicial content. So that is what you have to look for. So that's how the people understood the word at that time. So when Paul was using it, Luke was using it, when Justin Martin was using it, it's in the same way. So the classical Greek, in the common Greek, which was what we called Koine Greek, and that is the Greek where the New Testament is written in that sense, the word was used in the way I just explained, with categoria as the prosecution and apologia as the defense. That is being used for quite a long time, because even people like Plato and Socrates were using it. So let's look at the word again in the book of Acts. Excuse me. Acts 26 verse 2. Acts 26 verse 2. We will come back to the book of Acts and even to that same chapter again when we will see how the apologia was functioning. Paul motioned with his hand and began his defense, his apologia, and then he says King Agrippa and so on. So this is the specific word that the apostle is using in line with the understanding of the people then and there. So that is how you have to understand the term itself. It is the defense in a court case. In Paul's case, it's also a court case. So because he's speaking to the king, and the king is actually the judge at that time, similar to a judge. So he's, according to Philippians 1 verse 7, where the word is used again, and there you have the word defending the gospel. Okay, so we have Paul, we have Justin Martin, we have the New Testament, we have Koine Greek, but But it goes on. Let me see what I have here. Yep. So we have Acts 22 verse 2, Philippians 1 verse 7. Yeah. Yeah, Philippians 1 verse 7 and Romans 1:20. Romans 1:20. Let's look it up so we know exactly what is being said there. Romans 1 verse 20. And it says the following: For since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities, his eternal power and divine nature, have been seen, being understood for what has been made, so that people are without excuse. So the people do not have a defense against what God showed them. And so that is how we look at it. Plato defended Socrates. Caesar Augustus had his own Apologia, and that is it's important for us to know that those things are happening. We are talking about a pillar of bronze, and on that pillar of bronze we have the inscription, the deeds of the divine Augustus, in Latin res gestia divi Augusti. Don't mind the Latin. They were widely copied and distributed throughout the Roman Empire. It is regarded as one of the more important apologias of the ancient world. So a whole range of people, even up to Emperor Caesar Augustus. The legal nuance of apologetics was reframed in a more specific sense to refer to the study of the defense of the doctrine or belief. In this context, it is most commonly referred to as philosophical reconciliation. Religious apologetics is the effort to show that the preferred faith is not irrational, that believing is not against human reason, and that in fact the religion contains values and promotes ways of life more in accord with human nature than with other faiths or beliefs. So Christianity stood out, and that's why we have this specific defense. They are saying, actually, we are doing better than other beliefs, than other religions, and that is important for that time. So there is a change in mindset. In the English language, of course, we have the word apology, and apology means oh, I'm sorry, I mistakenly did something, but that is not exactly what the original carries. So when you go back to the Bible, remember, we're talking about something that is being written 2,000 years ago, and 2,000 years ago the word had the meaning of a court setting and not what we now do, apologizing for something we did wrong. It was speaking in defense, so it had a you can say a very different use, a very different meaning. And then we understand that sometimes the translators or the interpreters of the Bible say, okay, well, we are not living in the 1st century, so the word is okay, but what the translators are doing is saying, okay, in this time and age, it has a different meaning, so we are not going to use the word or the similar word to it, because it will confuse the people. They will think that we ask forgiveness for our beliefs, which is absolutely untrue. It's actually against the reality of apologetics. But it could be interpreted that way if people were not, if people did not understand the fact that it is a word that is being used 2,000 years ago, and it had a different meaning at that time. It has a different meaning today. So let's look at the following slide. When we look at who did apologetics, who were the apologists in the past, we have seen Paul, we have seen Origen, we have seen the Caesar, the Kaiser, the Emperor, but we also have seen in church history, Origen was a very important person, Augustine of Hippo, and remember we talked about Justin Martyr. By the way, if you're interested in the book of Justin Martyr, I can give it to you for free. This is we have it in electronic version, so you can just ask for it and I will send it to you. And next to Origen, Augustine and Justin Martyr, we also have Tertullian. I'm not going into the different people itself, because we have other people also, and they are, you can say they are as important as the others are, but it depends on what you look for, because people are very important in their time and they are less important afterwards. It doesn't mean that what they are saying and what they are thinking or their thoughts are irrelevant to us. That's not what we are saying or what I am saying. I'm saying that the specific value of people is more in their own age. Later on, you get all types of corrections to it. People do not agree with it. People think it's supposed to be different. But when you look at the context of the people themselves inside in their time, then you understand. So we have a whole range of different people doing apologetics, but that is a necessity. So it's out of necessity that they do that type of work, because let me say it this way, the enemies of Christianity, the enemies of Christ, the enemies of God are not always the same. You have people that are enemies of Christ because they have their own set of beliefs. There's nothing wrong with having your own set of beliefs, except of course if it is against Christ. But that changes. You can have a polytheist society like the Roman society was, and there the defense is totally different from a society like for example the Mohammedans later on. They have what they claim to be a monotheistic religion. I'm not going to say they are not monotheistic. What I'm saying is they do not believe in the same God as we Christians. That's a totally different point of view, they say, for them, they say that they are monotheistic. So it's different when and where. In the time of Reformation, apologetics was something different from what the same word or the same defense of the faith was during the Enlightenment and during modern times. That's what I'm saying. The Middle Ages have their own problems. The early church had their own problems. So every time you need people who are doing apologetics, answering the questions of that time. The 20th century atheist is a different type of the 19th century atheist. Many people in the 19th century, although they were atheists, they would not say of themselves that they are or were atheists. They would say, no, we are not. We are not church goers. But for many people, that already was enough to say that they are atheists. For many church-going, you can almost say church-going, tax-paying Christians, that was enough to claim someone was an atheist or an heretic or a part of a cult, because they did not exactly the same thing as what the church, whatever that was doing or were doing. So every time you have a different approach, different people bringing new ideas, new content to the apologetics. And that is important to us when we look back. We cannot use the same arguments Thomas Aquinas did or used, or Augustine when he used his apologetics at that time. We cannot use them anymore. Of course, there are certain things out of it that stays the same. And so we can use some of the ideas. Sometimes that's the basis. Sometimes it's something they found for themselves. And of course, when they are original thinkers, yes, sometimes an original thought can transcend the different ages. So in some cases we don't use it. In other cases we do use it. There's like I said, the whole range. We already touched on people like C.S. Lewis, and we are going to talk about him later on again. Other people like John Lennox, Chesterton, Doug Wilson, Lee Strobel, Francis Collin, Henry Morris, Alistair McGrath. By the way, Alistair McGrath wrote a book, Mere Apologetics, and I think that is important for us to read that book and to write a book report on it. So you will see what in the 21st century is important. So since we are living in the 21st century, I think it is important to use material that is being produced in this time and age. We have a whole range of people. Many of those people are completely unknown to the general public and even to the Christian public. But when you go into the section in the bookstore, in the Christian bookstore for the Apologetics, you will find those names. People like Ken Ham, Alvin Plantinga, William Lane Craig, Ron Nash, and then I said etc., because there is more, many more than what than the names I gave you already.